Buckle up, everyone, and welcome to Carpool Rugby League, a show where two rugby league tragics talk everything rugby league on your way to and from work. I'm Shano.
And I'm the chameleon.
Welcome aboard. On with the show. Well, Griffo, it's been a week. Some things happened, and that's okay. I think probably in the biggest bit of news in the last fortnight is we have another immortal in Ron Coote, and
Yeah.
well deserved. I know.
Oh, absolutely.
I
Yeah.
think when I was a young fan going for South Sydney, having absolutely no success with people would often talk about the 70s, and Ron Coote was always first and foremost on everyone's lips. And then I know you know me. We're both rugby league tragics, and sort of reading rugby league, learning about rugby league. Um, his role in the side, that South Sydney side that really unlucky to beat St George in the grand final 65 in that record crowd day. Um, in 67 winning the grand final with South Sydney. 68, 69 they'd lost, 70, 71. He was part of a forward pack which was littered with kangaroos. He then went to the Roosters. His dad played for the Roosters, so he had an affiliation there, and really he was the missing link in what was to be then their great run of winning two premierships with them, and being alongside the likes of people like Arthur Beetson. So well and truly deserved. I know some people. It's interesting, Griffo. As time goes on, I've been asked by quite a few people, was it deserved? And it's interesting that
Yeah.
we we I think in the past sort of fortnight where all this come up, I think a lot more has to be made of our rugby league history. Um, you know, um, I love you know what for example the Bears. What's the Bears going to look like in this? That's going to be the world's worst secret when it's pretty much let out that they're going to be the next team in their Western Australia iteration. And it's funny. There was a guy who posted something about history and said, look, why don't we use history? Why don't we use what other people have done? Why don't we look at the Sydney Swans and look what they have done? And why reinvent the wheel? Why not keep what we've got? And I think history is important. And I think I know the last two or three announcements of the Immortals. I thought he probably should have got a run. I'm glad he got a run while he's still alive and kicking to enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. Most of our listeners would not have seen Ron Coote play. You were born a few years after he retired, so you obviously didn't see him play.
No.
Um,
Only on replays.
yeah, of course. I did see him play. I was driving the other day trying to think, did I see him play live? And the answer to that is I probably did. I was just a primary school age kid in the time when I started taking notice of rugby league, and Ronnie Coote was one of the players that played for Australia in a team that included the likes of other immortals such as Arthur Beetson, Graham Langlands, Bobby Fulton. Those guys are immortals, and they were contemporaries of his. He was a rangy lock forward. I only saw him play with the Roosters. I didn't see him play at the Rabbitohs where he made his name, but he was part of the Roosters team, the Eastern Suburbs Roosters as they were, that won competitions back to back in 1974 and 1975. They also played in the AMCO Cup final in 1975. I was at that game as a young kid with my team. The coaches sort of took us down to Leichhardt Oval, so I would have seen Ron Coote play because he would have been part of that. But yeah, he was a great player, and not just known as a great player, but after his career, he carved out a great business career. He was the owner of a number of McDonald's franchises, and then he started, as it was, and he says himself, it wasn't just him, but with some mates, he started the Men of League Foundation,
generous, absolutely
now is the Family of League. So he is one of the most respected figures in the game. Did he deserve it? 100% he did. Obviously a great man as well as being a great player, and he was, he's a very humble man. I didn't watch the ceremony, but I heard and seen snippets of his speeches, and I heard an interview.
It was brilliant.
Next day. Yeah. I will go back and I'll have a look.
It was really, really good. And when you think about it, he's a guy that's played in 9 grand finals, won 6 from memory. Again, a bit of a rugby league nerd, so that's just in the memory banks there somewhere.
Yeah, so he was part of all those, the Rabbitohs era where they won.
Yeah, so the thing,
several.
and the thing with the Rabbitohs, I think, was that he was part of that Clive Churchill idea that if we have a forward pack that just dominates, that basically hurts the opposition, that can dominate, and they were very close to actually ending St George's run, and I think and they end up doing it in the semi-final. But I think there's no better sort of, I suppose, shout out you could get. I'll never forget 2003 grand final, and they interviewed John Sattler, and of course Scott Sattler's tackle that night has now become one of the greatest tackles of all time, if not the greatest tackle of all time. And they interviewed John Sattler, and they said, your son Scott made a tackle, and that obviously, someone like you, the person sort of said, as if to say, he's taken after you in tackling, and he said, I could never make a tackle like that. He said Ron Coote is the only other man who could make that tackle. And I thought, you think about it, he's a guy who's, who was captain of that great team, and to in a heartbeat say it's not me that could have done it, it was Ron Coote. I remember that night thinking, wow, like not only has he made an impression on people, but your captain still talks about you in that kind of glowing light. I think that says a lot about the player and the man. So
sure. It was a different game back then, and that sort of style defense, cover defense, was part of the lock forward's role, and that's how it was. He was obviously supremely good at it. In all the things that were flying around through the sports media, rugby league media, I heard a number of references from Jack Gibson talking about him as being the best forward in the game during his time. And that included Arthur Beetson. Arthur Beetson played prop, but certainly those two were the central figures in that Roosters domination of the mid-70s that I grew up in.
I remember reading a article many years ago now, and I've got a gut feeling Nick Politis wrote it from memory, and he spoke about, he said, like, at South Sydney, he was one of the cogs. Like, you had more or less, you had more or less the Australian forward pack at South Sydney. You know, where John Sattler played, like, he was on the edge.
Stevens, with Paul Say, those guys.
Bob McCarthy.
Bob McCarthy,
and he said when he came to the Roosters, he said, we had a missing piece. We needed a guy like him, and it's amazing to think that, you know, like, and he said that we wouldn't have won the grand finals in the 70s, the two of them, if we didn't have him.
Yep.
That he was that important to the side. Yep. Like, the difference, you said, you talk about MVP, and it might have been one of the first times I'd ever really heard about MVPs. Like, I remember he used that term, and he said, you talk about MVPs, that he was the most valuable player in that side. He said, no disrespect to anyone else, but what he could do defensively and in attack made things just, he said, it just meant everyone could do what they needed to do on that football field and win games. So, you know, when you got a guy like Nick Politis, who I think they were City forward by then.
I was going to mention that. That was the first jersey sponsorship.
He was the.
He ran City forward.
He was City forward dude. He was Mr. City forward. So
sure for him 1975. That was the first year that we saw a jersey sponsorship, and it was the Roosters. It was a City forward.
For him to say that was just, you know, like, what better kudos. But yeah, I thought it was brilliant when you know, and Cameron Smith will get his go, and everyone else will.
Oh, of course he will. Yeah.
But I think that it was very well deserved.
Griffo, and I think one of the things you mentioned earlier, Shane, which was great, was that, you know, that he was around to accept
100%. There's nothing worse than that.
Yeah. I think some of the others have been made immortals in memoriam.
Yes.
Then obviously, you know, guys that were very early on in the scene. But you know, Ron Coote, his name's been sort of put up there for quite a few times and hasn't been recognised. But yeah, great that a man in his in the twilight of his life, but still, you know, firmly in good mental and physical health, was able to get that accolade, and the joy and the pride that goes with it on his behalf.
Yeah, 100%. And I think David Morrow's passing might have actually given the whole view of things a new perspective, that really if people deserve it, and I'm not saying we should throw it out early or anything like that, but there are people in the later stages of their years that have done a lot for this game.
Yep.
Let's not wait until we, you know, like someone like David Morrow and what he's done in the media. He deserved it. You know, he deserves. That's the same reason I'm glad Bill Harrigan got recognised. You know.
Yep.
It's like, there's no point waiting if you don't need to wait. Now, I'm not saying you should put everyone in, but what I'm saying is that if there's no point waiting, you don't have to wait. Griffo, a lot of rugby league this week, a lot of different things happening. What caught your eye?
Okay. Most of the games I only sort of saw in minis, but there was, while, you know, there was some outstanding team performances, just an individual try from a guy who regularly catches my eye, Gold Coast winger Luffy Khan Pereira. He got the ball inside his own 10 meters. He used his speed, swerve. He changed gears several times, and he just was way too good for the opposition defense. I think it was the Roosters. The Gold Coast didn't win the game, but that was what caught my eye over the weekend. That guy's speed and his ability to change gears and just beat defenders it's not unparalleled. There's one or two other guys that can do it, like the Hammer, but there aren't many that can do that. He's from memory, he's leading the try scorer list this year. I know last year when we had our tipping comp that we had when we used to have the other things as well, I backed him last year to be the top try scorer. He didn't quite get there. He gets dropped from time to time. He's obviously got some other things in his game that aren't quite as good as they could be. But ball in hand,
you make a good point there, Griff, because there is the nucleus of a really good rugby league player. It's and I think where he sometimes, like, and I'm trying to say this without being, I suppose, derogatory to the coach, but sometimes these players, we expect wingers now to do so much.
Yep.
And sometimes, like, okay, and again, no, I hope this doesn't come across as derogatory or disrespectful, but we'll pick the Panthers, right? And you know a lot about Panthers. Someone like Brian Toto, he's got a job. His job's to run with the ball, and his job's to defensively stand his ground. He does that week in, week out to an exemplary level. If you asked him to go out of that brief, there would be issues, as there is with every winger. And I just think for him, I think sometimes, he's got such skill in that regard. Work to the strengths. Like, how many times have we talked about certain wingers on this podcast being defensively poor? And then all of a sudden you sort of start looking at the centre that's inside them and you go, oh, well, the centre that's inside him's not defensively great either. He's briefed to jam in. Well, he jams in and then all of a sudden it's a try time. I sometimes think with these types of wingers, it's also about the coaching staff giving them a brief that suits their football game. Like, if you're scoring one try every 3 weeks, then that doesn't work like that. When you're on top of the try scoring, and look, a guy who fulfills the brief brilliantly whenever he plays, Alex Johnson. There's a reason why that guy is the second highest try scorer of all time. Because he not only fulfills the brief in attack, but actually in defence, he's actually a really good defensive winger. He scores way more tries than he lets in. Brian Toto, another guy who you go, but how many tries does he score? He doesn't have to score tries. He makes 200 metres a game. But he defensively makes them. And I think the defensive structures help. And I just think he's a young guy who, I think in the right system, and I'm not saying that the Titans isn't the right system, but in the right system and in the right place at the right time, with the right people, he can set the world on fire. That's
he's
my
leading he will win the top try score. He's on 23.
Yeah, no one's going to come close.
Next best is Dom Young on 19.
Yeah.
So it's unlikely that you'd think Dom Young is going to go past him. But look, is Khan Pereira a representative winger? Not at this stage. Could he be? Absolutely. I believe he's from northern New South Wales. So he qualifies for the Blues, I'm led to believe.
All right, here we go. Here we go. How many times have we said that about northern New South Wales?
Oh,
The border creeps
I
south.
think he is. He would qualify as a Blue, but
No, it's good.
yeah, you don't sort of think of him in that sense, but you'd want him on the end of your back line, wouldn't you?
Oh, you know what? Any winger that gets, and this is, like, I'm going to mention the flashiest wingers to probably your meat and potato wingers, right? So, okay, I'll talk about Alex Johnson, Brian Toto, right? So one's representative, plays a lot. One, very, very little representative football, but, we know how many tries he scored. They're both very solid. They do their job. They get over 100 metres pretty much consistently. They do their thing. Dom Young, another example of that winger. I think the problem with Dom Young is he gets too overzealous at times and tries to catch everything and knocks on, and he's still learning the craft. But
Yeah.
Dom Young's another guy, like, he's solid for 100 metres. He holds the ball. He doesn't, he holds the chalk. He doesn't waver. He knows what to do. Look, I'm going to talk about two wingers here that I think, whilst one didn't stay a winger, I think when they were wingers, they were just solid football players. Luke Lewis and Luke Rooney. These are two players, and play for Panthers. In that side, they just did their role as wingers, and wingers' roles are really important. If you can get 100 metres a match, and you can do what you need to do, and you can hold the chalk, and you can hold your nerve, all of a sudden, you are a really, really special commodity. The hammer, when he does it, there's so many examples of people who, I think we throw wingers away sometimes, but with the right coaching and the right defensive structures, if you can get your winger right, he's a young man who can really springboard himself into some pretty big places. So yeah, I agree with you. Actually, that was that was actually really special on the weekend. All right, let's just quickly go through last week and what the week that was. West Tigers fans, is that 3 in a row now? I don't know.
No, two.
Two.
They've got a
They're on
shelf
to
life.
3.
They can win. They can win 2 in a row.
They're looking for. They've won
Just
2 in
doesn't
a
happen
row.
very often.
Okay, West Tigers 34 beat the Seagulls 26. Bulldogs, they're firming their ascendancy. 34 over the Warriors 18. The Broncos are 30-24. I'll say they got out of jail on that one. Really, Kevy's saying they'll make the finals. They might, but I don't see how far they'll go. Raiders 22, Panthers 18. That was a bit of a shock. The Luai intercept was something I didn't see happening. Storm 48, Dolphins 6, 36-16 over the Rabbitohs. The Rabbitohs are a shambles at the moment. They're probably waiting for Mad Monday now. Titans 22, fought hard for the Roosters 48. And the Sharks 38 beat the Dragons 10. When we look at the draw, when we look at the ladder, that meant that the Melbourne Storm, they're now officially the minor premiers on 42. Roosters in second, 36. Sharks 36. Panthers 36. That will have a lot of change when this week's games happen. In fifth place, Dogs 34. They are finals bound. Basically, I'm calling it now. They are finals bound. Cowboys 32, finals bound. Seagulls 31, I reckon they're finals bound. Dragons 28. Depending on what they do, will be interesting because they have a horrible for and against. Broncos on 26, they've got +2. Dolphins on 26, -27. Knights 26, -70. You also have the Raiders 26, -131. So that's the Dragons really just need to win. Titans 22, Warriors 20, South Sydney. Warriors 21, South Sydney are 20. Wow, this is shaping up to be the battle of the spoon. The Eels and the Tigers,
Next week.
16 points each. Will the rugby league gods smile on us? I hope so, because, geez, wouldn't it be great? Telstra Women's Premiership threw up some interesting results last week, I felt. Eels, 16, 36 Knights. I thought it was about time we saw the Knights do something like that. 28-18, Cowboys beat the Raiders. 26-6, Roosters beat the Titans. 44-14, the Broncos beat the Tigers. 28.
Sorry, Shano, was that right? You said the Roosters beat the Titans?
Sorry, did I say Roosters beat the Titans? Sorry. 26-6, the Titans beat the Roosters. That was a great game. Did you watch that? That was a fantastic game by the Titans. They have
before we came on, Shane, I started watching the mini. I didn't see the first half.
Well, they have been in all sorts, the Titans, really, and they it was shades of their sort of run last year. Yeah, it's almost like now they've warmed up, they're ready, like they're bristling, they're ready to go. 44-14, Broncos beat the Tigers, and 28-4, the Sharks beat the Dragons. The Dragons just can't seem to get it together. This at the moment, so yeah, they're in a bit of trouble. Yeah, I think the Dragons and the Tigers, they just don't seem to be able to fire. For this ladder, we've got Women's Premiership, Sharks on 10 points, Broncos on 6. I would never have thought the Broncos sort of 5 games in would be second. Roosters on 6 points, Knights on 6 points, Eels 6 points, Titans 6 points, Cowboys 6 points, Raiders, Dragons 2, and the Tigers haven't had a win yet. I really think that down to 7th on their day, if they want to play well, you think about it, 2nd to 7th have 6 points. That's pretty insane, really. So yeah, it's pretty big what's happening there. So
it's an interesting ladder. I saw it a few days ago. I didn't actually see any of the women's games last weekend, but I looked at the ladder and I thought, wow,
yeah,
that's amazing to have
massive games.
That many teams. What is it? 6 teams on 6 points.
Yeah, and so this week,
the 2 surprises, the Eels and the Cowboys. The others are all good sides. But and then it's also a surprise to me the Sharks are unbeaten after 5 games.
Yeah, and that's why I think this week is massive, and why not kick into it? On Saturday at 11 o'clock, I chuck this on at bloody Friday night at 6 o'clock, because this is going to be a cracking game. The Titans in 6th will play the Sharks in 1st for the Women's Rugby League. It's a really, at Seabus Super Stadium, I suppose the big out for the Titans is Fuimaono. The Titans are starting to get that sort of groundswell of what they do well. They're starting to, remember last year they did this. They sort of etched away at it. You didn't know whether they were or weren't, and you weren't 100% sure what was going to happen. And then all of a sudden they're in the grand final. You didn't know what was going on. It was this is what the Titans are starting to do now. They're starting to generate that kind of interest. They're starting to generate that kind of thing. And building on what they did last week, I really think that they've got an opportunity here to beat the Sharks. I think the Sharks, look, if you told me at the start of the competition that the Sharks will be where they are. No disrespect, I would have said, probably not. But I really think that the Sharks, I hate saying they're due for a loss, but maybe they are. Look, I think for the Titans, the person to really look at is Lauren Brown. Lauren Brown last week really set the world alight. She scored 2 tries, 3 from 5 in conversions. She is the person that if they don't control, the Titans will absolutely run riot over them. To be fair, the Sharks will. The Sharks do have a plethora of really good talent. Staples, Penatani, Tonagano, Preston, Ellie Johnson. These are people that they will be first graders in any competition. So with all that said and done, I'm picking the Titans. Griff, who are you thinking about?
Sorry, Shana, where are they playing?
They're playing at Gold Coast. They're at Seabus Super Stadium.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll lean towards them as well. They put the cleaners through the Roosters, I think, and they were last year's runners-up. They're down on the ladder in 6th, but I think that will change, and I think they'll get the job done at home.
Massive game. If you're on 6th, if you're in that group, that gaggle of teams, massive game. Like, this is huge for the Titans, because not only will it help their for and against, but it will also help their positioning moving forward in this ladder. And like top 4, that's the other thing we often.
Right, it's only a top 4, yeah.
Yeah, that's the other thing we often.
For and against is going to be crucial.
It's going to be massive. So anyway, that's game number 1. Game number 2 is the Eels versus the Dragons. You guys know the soft spot I got for the Eels women's side. Last year, I was just praying that they'd do something, and again, they've done it. Look, the Eels are definitely a team that are playing out of their skin. Losing last week to the Knights, but the Knights are who the Knights are. Playing up against a Dragons side who is just absolutely down on confidence. That they were beaten 28-4 last week. When we look at the Eels and we look at the players that just seem to be clicking for the Eels, they have this. I suppose everyone has their role, and everyone does it really well. I think the biggest problem was last week. Through the middle, they just got busted up so quickly. The key person in controlling where they go and what they do is Rachel Pearson. I think she's done a brilliant job. Over the last few weeks. Probably last week got a bit above her. If the Dragons want to win, it's going to be people like Ella Costa, Madison Mulhall making meters straight down the middle, trying to get Azali Hopkins as well out of dummy half, and really using the space to allow Tegan Berry to do what she does. Look, I think the Eels have this really solid game plan. They are missing a couple of troops. Both teams are. In the greater schemes of things, Paseka is out for the Dragons. But, geez, I think the Eels actually have this. I think the Eels are a team that can see the bigger picture now, and they are really, really trying to build momentum, and it's on the back of Rachel Pearson, who is just playing some sublime football. Her kicking game, they're and I don't mean this in a derogatory sense in the terms of women or men. Her kicking game, there, regardless of the NRL you're playing, men or women, there are elements of her kicking game which are first rate in both competitions. And I think if she can emulate that this week, bit off last week, emulate that this week, she's got the Dragons covered. I've got the Eels in this one, Griff.
For mine, they've overachieved in winning 3 games already. The Parramatta Eels. And the Dragons have somewhat underachieved.
Oh, Dragons, eh?
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with the Dragons here.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe they've got some classy players in McGregor, Casey Ray Cyrus, and of course Tegan Berry at the back. Now, I'm just looking through some past results. They've only won 1 game.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is their opportunity to add to that, and I think Coach Soward, he really will be. If they can't win this game, and I don't expect in any way they're going to make the top 4.
It's season. It is season gone. This will be the final.
Yeah, I think they're already gone. But this is an opportunity to beat a side that has performed well, but is I would consider not high on the talent. So they really must win this game if they're going to sort of get anything out of this season. I think there's 4 games left. There are a mathematical chance of making it, but they're not going to win too many games, the Dragons. But this is one they can win.
What's got me this year, Griff, with the Dragons, and in previous years, I've always thought their defence has sometimes won games. Their defence this year has been horrible. And their attack just hasn't been able to... Like, we know the West Tigers have the worst defence and the worst attack. They're next. And I wouldn't have said that at the start of this season with the Dragons. You know, they just can't score tries and they just can't keep them out. So, yeah, I hope they can turn it around because they've got some superstars. And if they want to go on a mini run, well, they have to do it this week. Look, the next game at McDonald Jones Stadium at Newcastle sees the Newcastle Knights plays the West Tigers. This could be an absolute bloodbath. The Newcastle Knights are just the class. They're a juggernaut. What they've got happening at the moment, you know, their win last week started in the 2nd minute. Upton scores, bang, 2nd minute. Higgins scores, bang, 3rd minute. And Lillian White, 13th. Abigail Roach, 19th. 4 tries in 20 minutes. That's game over. There was nothing that the Eels could do. And I know the Eels scored their 16 points in very quick succession as well. There was nothing that they could do. It was just like bang, 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 bang. And I'll say this. I know that, you know, Tamika Upton scored the last try in the 69th minute. It could have been more. And Roach, 3 from 7. 36-16 in some ways flattered the Eels a bit. The Knights were just absolutely on fire last week. I've got the Knights winning this one by a country mile.
So just, again, I didn't see the game, but when you talked about Roach, 3 from 7, so obviously Jessie Southwell was out in that game. Yeah. And I noticed she's listed as number 22 this week. So unlikely to play. You'd think, but they
Yes,
still
I
get the
don't
job
think
done.
so, but yeah,
Yeah.
like I think the Knights.
They're just not going to win by as much because they're missing their number one goal kicker, but they'll still win by plenty.
And I think they were 20-4 at halftime or something. It was just, it was, it was absolute, like it was no mercy type of football. It was,
Yeah.
you know, it was almost that kind of foot on the throat. Wait, we're getting ready for the finals. So that was where that one was at. Next game we have Broncos, who I don't know. I don't mean any disrespect. I think have overachieved in some ways in second position. Up against the Cowboys in seventh. They're playing at Totally Workwear Stadium in Brisbane. They're again both sides are more or less 1-17. The Broncos for me have been this side in the women's game that sort of have been somewhat of the overachievers. I think we had sort of this discussion when we were talking about them a few weeks ago now, and they are an aging side and whatnot, and are we looking at the names in the Brisbane Broncos, what they would have been 5 years ago versus now, and it's quite interesting as to how they're playing. They're playing some pretty good football. I suppose beating West Tigers last week 44-14.
Help the for and against.
Yeah, where it helped the for and against, and where the Tigers are at. On the flip side of things, they are playing the Cowboys. Cowboys good win last week against the Raiders at GIO Stadium. Played very, very good football. They played some exceptional football. Naokore was probably the player for me who you thought was going to score every time she got the ball. First minute try. You don't see that too often. The other thing with the 28-18 win is they got 2 from 6 in conversions. Whilst I look at the 6 tries and go, yep, they're a try scoring juggernaut. Against the Broncos, that's not going to be as prolific as it was against the Raiders. Secondly, the Broncos, they tend to put 4 to 6 far more easily than what most other teams do, and I think for me that's a bit of a Teasel got 6 from 8 on the weekend, so that when they score 4, it's probably going to be 6. Whereas for the Cowboys at the moment, they're goal kicking 4, maybe 6. For that reason and that reason alone, I think it's going to be a tight game. I actually think goal kicking is going to matter. I've got the Broncos winning this one, only because I think the goal kicking will be an issue. Griff?
Yeah. Again, I mentioned that I think the Cowboys have overachieved so far. I mean, good luck to them.
Yeah.
But in the Broncos, I think we'll win this game. In the battle of one of the Queensland derbies. Broncos to win. Do I want them to win? No. I want the Cowboys to win. Yep. But I think the Broncos will get the job done at home.
Yeah. We'll talk more about that in the first grade synopsis. 6:30 Sunday, Allianz Stadium. We have the Roosters playing the Canberra Raiders. Roosters are just absolutely doing some brilliant things on the field at the moment. Playing some very, very good football. Both sides have a couple of outs. Nothing that would strategically affect the overall running of the teams. Look, I look at the Roosters, and I genuinely think the Roosters think that this is the year. This is the year. This is something that they can build towards something. They play well. They do everything they need to do. They seem like they're going to do everything out of the ordinary. They're just doing this absolute awesome stuff. And then all of a sudden, bang, they hit the Gold Coast Titans last week. And you go, what? They had 39% of the possession. Their completion rate was 52%. They had, they were beaten in every main statistic except for offloads. They just got pummeled regardless in every main statistic. They had to make more tackles. They missed more tackles. Ineffective tackles was there. They made 16 errors last week. This is the problem with the Roosters at times. If they get in this rut where they start to make serious errors, they seem to not be able to dig their way out of it. Look, I'll be honest and I'll be a little bit kind to them. They did have 3 HIAs. So they had 3 players who were off on HIA. In saying that, their completion rate was absolutely abysmal. They're going to have to be far better this week. I think they will be. I think last week was the eye-opener. I think it was the wake-up that they needed. I think it was a bit of the tap on the shoulder, hey, if you're going to feature in, at the moment you're third, you're on 6 points, you're in that gaggle, you've had some good wins. If you want to be a part of this, if you want to be a part of finals and get to 8 points, you're going to have to win this week. I've got them winning this week. Griff, what have you got?
Yeah, I think they'll win. But it's been a sort of a similar pattern with this team. Sort of expect them to win every time they play because you look at the roster. And I expect them to win. The Raiders haven't been going well. They haven't had a bad year, actually. I thought they were okay last year, and the team's pretty similar, but they're just not getting the job done. Roosters have to win this.
They're lacking punch this year. They're lacking that sort of the steel this year, the Raiders. Like last year I thought they were a really punchy side. This year they've tried to be they've tried to be clever and sort of throw the ball around, and I think they've missed the mark. But anyway, that's just my opinion, but yeah.
A lot of injuries for the Roosters.
Yes, Roosters.
They've only named 20 players. They're obviously their roster
they're struggling.
Affected badly by injuries, but you look at the team they've got on the field and they'll win this game. I'm pretty sure on that one.
All right, Griffo, takes us to Thursday night. NRL at 7:50, we have the Cowboys in 6th playing the first place Storm. And geez, if the Cowboys ever wanted a Christmas present, they got one. We have Katoa, Grant, Howarth, Hughes, King, Big Nelson, Meaney, Blore, Leoro, Kamakamika, Warbrick, all out, what we believe is rested. JT of the Tomalamo kind is in. Jeremiah Nane is in. It's a rested Storm team who still has, however, the Pappenhausen in a fullback. Fa'alongo is in at wing. Grant Anderson, at halfback. Tyrone Wishart's been elevated to the hooking role. Christian Welsh will be a prop. Alec McDonald in at lock. And it's a bit of a hooathon. Tepe Moroa is in at interchange as well. There's a name I haven't said in a while. However, the Cowboys seem to be somewhat bolstered by the fact that Jason Tomalomo, he's been named. He's at the prop. When you look at their side, it's Drinkwater, Felt, Holmes. You've got Talangi, Dearden, and Clifford. So Dearden and Clifford are in the halves. Reece Robson at hooker. You've got Ruben Cotter at lock. Very, very good bench as well. I've got the Cowboys winning this one. I just think that they've got far more structure about them. You can never set your watch by the Cowboys, but against the side that really is a Bitzer Storm team, and to be fair, Bellamy made no qualms about it. He was quite honest. He said, we're minor premiers. Why am I going to start putting people in jeopardy? I don't need to. I got the Cowboys winning this one, and it may have significantly helped their finals chances, Chris.
Yeah, I've got to agree. I think the Cowboys are in the finals anyway. It just may affect.
Yeah, I do too. Yep.
Where they finish in that bottom half of the top 8.
Yeah, I've got them. I think I said
it's a bonus. It's a bonus 2 points for them, and they've been lucky. It might not have been last year. It might have been the year before. I think they got the Panthers did a similar thing, and the Cowboys played a second string Panthers side towards the end of the year. So I have no problem with what the Storm are doing. I'd have more of a problem if I was a supporter and they didn't do it. It was just a matter of whether they do it this week or next week.
Yep.
They still have some stars, as you mentioned. Pappenhaus and Munster have been out for extended periods this year, particularly Munster. And they want the games under their belt. They've got Suafar-Longo out there who can create pretty much anything. They're not over the line, the Cowboys. And I think the biggest threat to the Cowboys is just that feeling that, we're playing a second string side. It's just go through the motions. That's the only thing that's going to stop them from winning this game. But being the Cowboys, they can find a bad performance. And if it happens to be this Thursday, they'll lose.
They're in trouble. Well, you know what? If I was the Cowboys coach, whatever, stuff, I'd be saying, you win this week, we've probably got a home final. Week 1, we're at home. We've got the Bulldogs are on. Look, the Bulldogs are light years ahead of us, for and against. We're not going to leapfrog them.
No,
if we can get to 34, we have pretty much put in our hands the ability to play at home, and we're probably playing the Seagulls. Yeah, I'd rather play the Seagulls in Townsville than at Brookie.
Yeah, looks either way. It's going to be 6v7. It'll be Cowboys and Seagulls. Sea-Eagles. Sorry. It's just a matter of who's got the home game.
I'd rather
Cowboys have just got to pick up one more game, and this one should be it.
Yep.
Opportunity for a couple of guys that ordinarily wouldn't play first grade on that, particularly on the interchange bench there.
Well,
Keegan Russell-Smith is a Penrith junior. I think he has played first grade. And Adavalu Lasati was still with the Panthers earlier in the year, and he then went down to Melbourne mid-season, so he's going to make his first grade debut. Tristan Powell, I'm not familiar with.
They've had a revolving door of interchanges, so this is something that they can definitely make their name for. All right, at 6:00 on Friday, I'm actually looking forward to this game. The Bulldogs in 5th will place the Seagulls in 7th. Massive, massive game with massive, massive implications. Kurt Mann, Stephen Crichton out. Corey Waddell for the Seagulls out. So you have a situation where Bronson Sherry and Jacob Kiraz, they're in the centres. Skelton, Addo-Carr on the wing. Connor Tracy, of course, at fullback. And you have Matt Burton and the Sex Bomb, Toby Sexton in at 6 and 7. The spine for the Seagulls, if you want some, if you want to be reminded, Tom Trbojevic, Luke Brooks, Cherry Evans. You have Croker and of course Jake Trbojevic 13. Jamin Salmons playing 13 for the Dogs. This is going to be an absolutely insane match. Max King and Samuel Hughes starting props for the Dogs, and you have Josh Curran on the interchange bench. Eli Clark is the replacement for there. Blake Taft has also been elevated with some background noise, whether he will come into the interchange bench to just I suppose add a bit of spice to what they have. This is a brilliant game ahead. I look at these two teams. I think that Stephen Crichton being out for the Bulldogs is massive. I actually look at the benches for both these sides. Simply, I just look at the interchange bench. Sorry, I went too far ahead. Cooler, Alloway, Bullymore, Lodge versus Hayward, Moran, Hayes and Curran. I'm assuming Curran will play. I know he's been in some great form, fell out of form, but geez, there's some pretty even like for likes there. It's at Accor Stadium. It's a Bulldogs home game. You'd say the Bulldogs faithful are going to be out there. Griffo, can I just say, I have chopped and changed about 7 times today. I've chopped and changed about 3 times whilst I've been talking. I got to flip a coin, and you know when I flip a coin, I'm going to home side. I'm going to Dogs for no other reason. Who are you going
for? There's a lot of reasons why I should say the Bulldogs. Certainly consistency, form are the 2 main things that say the Bulldogs should win this game. But I look at I line up the 2 teams there, and you mentioned the outs for the Dogs. I know they won a game without their captain a few weeks ago. It might have been the Broncos game where they absolutely slaughtered the Brisbane Broncos without their captain. But this Seagulls team, who were pretty ordinary last week, after getting off to a flying start, and I think they were 16-0 up, and you were thinking, is it going to be 60-0? And they the handbrake went on, and they lost about 3 players to the sin bin, and to be fair, the West Tigers actually played really well. I think Manly will bounce back here. Turbo, Brooks, Cherry Evans. I think they'll fire this week. Plenty of pace in the Manly back line. The forwards look, pretty decent. I think it's, the Bulldogs will put up a massive fight. And I just think Manly have the classier team. Whether class beats enthusiasm and grit, we'll see. But I'm gonna actually back the Manly Warringah Seagulls away. And I think it'll be a massive crowd. The Bulldogs fans have really gotten behind their team, and they turn up in big numbers. So the Bulldogs will probably outnumber the crowd. That is probably 20-1. I would imagine they'll outnumber the Seagulls supporters, who don't have the biggest history of leaving the peninsula. But I think their team will win. And I don't know what a game it's going to be. Fortunately, I don't. I probably won't get to see this game live because I'll be in the car. My way to the following game.
Yes, of course, on your way to the game at Bluebet Stadium at Penrith, where the Penrith Panthers will take on the South Sydney Rabbitohs. I suppose the only out for both these sides, Shakai Mitchell's out. Where do we begin? Dylan Edwards, Schneider, Luai, Kenny, and Isaiah Yeo. That is a spine. And you know what I say? Your 13's part of the spine. They are a spine that on their own could beat many, many teams in this competition. They're playing a side whose ball handling is at times not to NRL standard, whose defensive structures are weak at best. They've got shining lights in their side who can play well. Young players like Tallis Duncan who turns up week in, week out. You've got Jai Gray, who just runs at the line hard. Tyrone Munro's back. That's not going to cut it against the side who's just consistently playing brilliant football, who know each other's game exceptionally well, and who plays, whose football is second to none. Schneider and Luai, although it's not their first halves combination, I think poor Jack Whiten and Cody Walker, they're really trying to see what happens. They're passing left and right and not too sure. Damien Cook whilst defensively been outstanding, in attack has been somewhat lackluster. Sean Kepi, well, when the last Burgess brother leaves South Sydney, he will be the new knock-on king. Kolomatangi in a 13, Kolomatangi was something else. When you've got Cameron Murray in your side, you're never going to be 13. He's up against,
Well, he's not there, Shane.
Well, he's not there, but yeah.
I know Cam Murray's listed, but
he's listed, but he's not there. And what I was trying to say, and what I'm trying to say here is that, Keon Kolomatangi has now become this one-string bow player, where if I'm not 13 or I'm not in the middle, I don't know where I am. And look, Kolomatangi will be Kolomatangi will be in at lock. You'll have Tom Burgess will come in. Jacob Host will be starting. I think he'll be starting second row. Kolomatangi in the lock, but Kolomatangi over the last couple of weeks, and the point I was trying to make was that, if I'm not in the middle, well then I don't play. Look, there's a team of haves versus a team of have-nots. I'm not talking about skill. I'm actually talking about attitude. And Penrith has a bucket ton of positive attitude versus the Rabbitohs, who just this year, their attitude has been... No, there was a point of time in the middle where it was pleasing, but considering who they've got and what they do, it was where they should have been. The Panthers will pants South Sydney this week. The Penrith Panthers will absolutely run in a cricket score against the Rabbitohs this week, Griff?
Well, I hope you're right, but I don't expect that'll be the case. I am expecting Penrith to win. They have to win, otherwise they actually could, possibly drop out of the top four. After you don't often see the Panthers go back-to-back losses.
No.
There was a great game a few weeks ago against the Melbourne Storm. One of the games of the year, one of those where, hyped up, but lived up to the hype. Storm, I got no problem with the Storm winning that game by 2 points. There were some contentious calls, but to be fair, they went both ways. And last week, I did expect that Penrith would get over the top of the Canberra Raiders, and particularly when they were they were up by 8 at one stage in the second half, and I thought, we're dominating the game, but just weren't putting the points on. And then we saw the Raiders get an intercept.
The intercept did not help. That was
but they deserve to win. I'm not saying that Penrith should they weren't robbed or anything. Nothing. I'm not taking in decisions or anything like that. The Raiders deserve to win. They hung in there. They defended really well on their line, and they were under siege. But Penrith just didn't get the points. And this has been a bit of a recurring situation in a number of games, both that Penrith have won by small margins and also went down when they were expected to win. The Warriors game on Magic Round was another example where Penrith probably dominated the game but couldn't put too many points on, and then ended up going down with a late try to the opposition. Coach Cleary, he hasn't really been overly happy with how the team's been playing. He's made some changes this week. Taruva, who's missed the last 2 games that Penrith have actually lost, he comes in for Dane Laurie. Now, Dane Laurie's a really good player. He does some fantastic things. But unfortunately, he's had a big error or 2 in each game, including his first card up of the ball coming out of the backfield. And those have been crucial. In addition to that, last week, he made a dreadful defensive error in the second half, leaving his wing, and the Raiders scored a long-range try. Hopewadi, I think it was, went down the sideline. I can't remember who scored the try, but had Dane Laurie sort of stayed on his wing, that probably wouldn't have been scored. So they've had problems defensively out wide all year. Taruva's had his issues. Tango's had his issues. I thought Tango's been good the last couple of weeks. Excuse me. Paul Alamotti's been out for a little while. He broke I think he broke his arm. He comes back into the team in the centres. Most of his games, I think, have been on the wing this year. But it'll be interesting to see how he goes. I think he might have come back in reserve grade last week. Brad Schneider is there. Jack Cole got injured in reserve grade. I don't know what the extent of his injury was, but so Brad Schneider's obviously got the job for this week and next week. And then we'll see what happens, whether Nathan Cleary is back for the first game of the finals. You talked about a big loss here for the Rabbitohs. I don't see that. I just don't know whether Penrith can put together enough points for a big loss. I do want to see them get off to a better start, and I want to see them get out to a big lead, because one thing about this team they're opposing is, while they've not been playing well and all the disappointments you've mentioned, if they've got a sniff of victory, they do have players in the team, in particularly Cody Walker, who can fire up and produce points. So I want to see Penrith take the 2 points and just turn things around. They haven't played badly, but they haven't been anywhere near their best. And in particular, I just want to see the defence improve out wide, and I don't want to see wingers coming in and making defensive errors. So I'm going to back Penrith. I'm a little bit surprised that maybe Trent Tolau is still the 14. I thought Somerton, while he was out there last week, looked dangerous. He scored a try from Dumiath. He made a number of runs. Obviously, Penrith missed Mitch Kenny last week. Kenny's service out of Dumiath is quite good. The other guys, their service out of Dumiath, probably not as good as Mitch Kenny. And the area of Mitch Kenny excels in his defence. And whenever Mitch Kenny is not in the team, Penrith's defence isn't quite as good. So he served a suspension last week. I'm looking for him to lead the defensive line. And Yo's been great. He probably is South's biggest threat, I think. And Jerome Luai was going pretty well till he threw that intercept. Obviously, no one plans to throw an intercept, but he'll be looking to bounce back and get the 2 points here.
Well, a massive game coming up for the implications of the 8. You've got the Parramatta Eels first thing, and you wouldn't believe it, me saying the Parramatta Eels, they're in 16th. They're fighting for the spoon. Playing the St. George Illawarra Dragons, they're in at 8th. It's a Combank Stadium. It's the 3 o'clock on Saturday game. And it has massive implications. If the Dragons win this, will they almost have one hand on the final 8. There are no outs for either of these sides. Interestingly, for the Dragons, and read into it what you want, Ravalawa, he's on the reserve bench for the Dragons, but it is it's more or less 1 to 17 for both these sides. Interesting game, because when the Dragons have played well, they've done some phenomenal stuff. And, I suppose one person on the interchange bench for Tyler Mariner, he's someone that they've brought in to try and shore things up. Parramatta, when you look at who they're, Clint Gutherson, Mika Sivo, you got Penasini, Talangi, Brown, Dejanasi, Regan Campbell-Gillard, you go Sean Lane, Talangi of the Kelmer kind, Bryce Cartwright, Offa Hengawi, Joey Lussick on the bench. You're thinking, how is this side not going to win? I watched the Dragons last week, and you were just waiting for Hunt and Bird to do something. Their attack last week was really, really stifled. Parramatta, on the other hand, they can't hold the ball. And when they do hold the ball, they don't necessarily get it into good positions. And then, okay, they've held the ball, they've got in a good position, but then their next defensive set has more holes than Swiss cheese. I just think on the back of this, the Dragons have far more to play for than the Parramatta Eels. I've got the Dragons in this one, Griff.
Yeah, I'm going to tip the Dragons, not necessarily for some of the reasons that you talked about, but simply because they're due to win this week. They go win-loss, win-loss. But I don't know how long that string has been going. I've tipped them a few weeks on the wrong. I tipped them last week. That was dumb. But I do think the Sharks were very good. I will say that. I have no confidence that St. George Illawarra will win this game. But I'm going to tip them simply because they're due to win this week. They could have wrapped up a top 8 spot by now. They probably should have. They've lost some games that they were expected to win. But on the flip side, they've actually won some games they weren't expected to win. Highlighted by the Melbourne Storm down in Melbourne not all that long ago. Para are better at CommBank. They've got, you talked about the fact that on paper there's plenty of quality about this side. They were going well last week, early on in the game in particular, but then they sort of got dominated, and the Broncos, I think it was, won by a bit of a margin. I'm going to stick with Dragons simply, as I said, because it's lost last weekend, win this weekend, but no faith in this side. They may make the 8. Their hands, destiny is in their own hands. They win, and they win next week. They're in the top 8. But all of those sides on 26 just behind them know that there's a better than even chance the Dragons will slip up in at least one of those games. The law of averages says that. Dragons this week, no confidence.
Well, after the Dragons game, you've got the Dolphins in 10th playing the Broncos in 9th at Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane. This is going to be massive. This is going to be a huge game for all concerned. I suppose all the key ins tend to be more on the extended bench. One very interesting one, Tavita Pangai Jr.
I just saw that. Yeah,
he's listed at number 19. I dare say he'll get elevated from there. However, when you look at the Broncos bench, it's pretty much, you think all those players will be playing. You've got Haas again on an extended bench. He will get elevated if he can be. Very interesting game, this one. The Hammer. I think this game's actually made for people like the Hammer. I think that we're going to see something special for him. Jermaine Asako. You have Rogers and Adam Reynolds, 6 and 7. Billy Waters at 9th. Patrick Carrigan, who's just, he is Patrick Carrigan, in at 13. The biggest problem with the Dolphins is that they find it hard, when they find it hard to hold the ball and make meters, they just get smashed in defence. That is their key problem moving forward. The Dolphins, if there any opportunity, play the Knights next week. So they play the Knights next week and really need to get some points from this week if they're to do something. Last week in their loss, I thought against the Bulldogs, I just thought they were just they got found wanting. They just didn't turn up in the key areas. Their defence at times was stifled. Look, up until half time, they were right in the match. Like when Josh Adokar scored just before half time, we went, it's a runaway try. It's lucky. Like if they can get some ball in the second half, then they're half a chance. The key problem for me with the Dolphins is this: their completion rate is actually very good. So last week again, they were 81%. It's their fifth tackle options, which are absolutely ordinary. You got a guy like Adam Reynolds, whose kicking game is absolutely outstanding. I think you've got Adam Reynolds on one side, who's playing the game. You've got Wayne Bennett on the other hand, who's the coach. I'm picking an upset in this one. I'm picking the Dolphins. I just think he's going to have them primed for this match. He's going to tell them what's on the line, and if they don't want to win, it's season done. Now, I'm not saying season's already done for them. I just think that a guy like Wayne Bennett knows exactly how to get this team to do what they need to do. I think the Broncos They're driven by Adam Reynolds. They can be this safe as houses team. I think the Dolphins are going to throw caution to the wind. I think it's actually going to disrupt the Broncos. I don't know what it is, Griff. I've just got something that tells me the Dolphins are going to win this.
Yeah, I'm also tipping the Dolphins.
Oh!
Um,
Well, where you are on the tipping comp fills me with more confidence.
no, I was leading, and then I've crashed and burned in the last month. I think I look at the teams, and I have a little less confidence than I probably would have had because of a couple of outs, principally Nicarima, but also Jesse Bromwich, both out due to concussion protocols.
Yeah.
I like the look of the backline of the Dolphins, albeit that Nicarima's out. They've got an able replacement in Sean O'Sullivan. The Broncos, they've won a few games. All the doom and gloom. They're now talking it up. We'll be in the finals.
We'll be in the finals. You're thinking, really, mate?
Yeah. Unfortunately, as good a bloke as he is, he comes out with some statements that probably he'd be better off not saying. They're not going to make the finals because they play the Storm next week.
I don't think. Yeah, you're right. You're 100% correct. I think the Storm pulled the trigger this week in saying let's roll to the finals. I think they're going to get they're going to have the full Dragons fire breath from the Storm next week.
Yeah, no, they're going to get pumped next week. The Dolphins, the season is too long for this team. We saw it last year where they started really well.
Yeah.
This team was up in the top 4 at one stage, but they just can't sustain the performance. Partially because maybe their squad is not as strong as some others. They don't have the depth. I think, for them to win, the Hammer's got to pretty much be man of the match, and he's capable of it. Katoa leading them around the place. I do, and Herbie up against his old team, Avarillo. They got talent there. The Beanstalk in number 5 and Asako. Well, he's a high quality goal kicker. So I think I'm going to tip him. I'm not overly confident, but it's going to be it's going to be. I'd imagine they'd pretty much go close to selling.
Yeah, should do.
Selling out. It's Saturday evening 5:30.
Should do.
The Dolphins have got massive support, and obviously the Broncos are the biggest supported team in the NRL. So, what a clash! Bennett, of course, up against Walters. Bennett, he was shafted by the Broncos, so he's always got an axe to grind. And just on Bennett, he made the Hall of Fame and deservedly so. Didn't turn up. He said he had reasons, and it may well be justified. But I thought, I thought it was a bit sad, really, that you're being bestowed this great honor and 100% deserved. I mean, he's been he's in the conversation to be the greatest coach of all time. But I think he's let himself down, really. And if it wasn't a legitimate reason, this is a great honor that was given to him, and I believe Sam Burgess accepted it on his behalf. A guy who's come around the world from the UK to accept his own award.
The guy who I friggin' hope is his assistant coach in the next couple of years.
Yeah, and then taking over. I mean, that's something.
That's another conversation.
Would, I guess probably had things have been different, he
Well,
might have been coaching.
Dimitriou, coach of the Comals.
Yeah. Oh well. Good luck.
Good luck there. But anyway, yes.
Yeah,
yes.
but on this game, I'm back in the Dolphins.
Yeah, okay.
But it's a 50-50
I'll take
chance.
that. I'll take that.
Yeah.
I'm happy to be in. I'm in good company. That's what matters. 7:35 on Saturday at PointsBet Stadium. The Sharks take on the Warriors. Look, the Sharks have Nico Hines named in somewhat of an extended bench. I think Katoa probably more importantly named in at the wing. Some key outs for the Warriors and RTS, who's probably been in and out more than the hokey pokey this year. At times, Nico Hines is on the reserve bench. I don't know. I don't know if I'd risk him. You're pretty much finals bound. Look, this is a game. I don't want to disrespect your grab of the week, Griffo, and I fully agreed with you. Can I put in another grab? Maybe a close second was Will Kennedy's try.
Oh, he left. Yeah.
That was out.
Don't worry, I saw that. I think I saw that live.
Wasn't that outstanding?
Not at the game, but I thought, wow.
It just drove the nail into the St. George coffin. It was such a good catch. And I think we've said it on this podcast before. Will Kennedy is such an important part of this Sharks team. You've got Will Kennedy, you've got Katoa, Talakai, Iro. Probably where Atkinson, Trindle, 6 and 7 is something that's developing. Not too sure. Rayleigh, safe as houses. McInnes at 13, safe as houses. Look, I've got the Sharks winning this one. I think the Warriors are actually really, really down on confidence. They're down on confidence. They're down on troops. They're down on everything. Griffo, where have you got this game?
Yeah, Sharks all the way. The Warriors couldn't get up for the big game last week at home. They renamed the stadium Shaun Johnson Stadium. Unfortunately, Shaun Johnson, started with a mistake. He was just too emotional for him. He still had tears in his eyes from the reception before the game, and I just think the Warriors. It's been a poor year for them after so much hype and excitement last year. The hype's still been there. The crowds turn up and they pack out the stadium, but the team's performance has been very inconsistent. And in fact, this takes me back to the very first game of the year for both these teams. They played each other over in New Zealand. The Warriors got off to a very good start, but didn't put enough points on. And the Sharks just hung in there and ended up winning the game in a game that the Warriors, they should have won. But then it's been a similar story where
they've been disappointing this year, haven't they? Really?
Yeah, they have. Yeah. So, they were expected to, at the very worst, make the 8, but they've been out of it. I don't know if they've been in the 8 at any stage at all. They've been on the fringe of it.
Early on, they looked promising, but it waned. It waned very
promising
quickly
in a number of games early in the season, but weren't getting the victories. And I don't give them much of a chance at all here. I think they've been cooked.
Yeah,
they've still got a good side on paper, but the performance hasn't been there. It's Sharks. They've been a surprise to me in how they've come back after quite a slump in the mid-season. I thought they were gone. I thought they'll probably make it into the 8, but they're actually improving. The question is, with Nico, It's going to be a lot of pressure on him when he comes back because the side's actually playing well.
Yes,
So
I
if they
thought
don't
the
win,
same thing. I
if
thought
they don't
exactly the
win,
same thing. I agree. Yes.
like they've got this dreadful record in September football
Well, it's
in recent years.
yes. They know how to find the back door.
They do, and now they're going to be in the top four, and I don't think too many people had them in the top four before the ball was kicked off for round one. They led the comp for quite a while, and then things went south. But they've turned it around with some different personnel, and obviously Nico has been out for a long time, but they've been able to play really well. I think they win this game, and then I don't think we're going to see Nico this week.
No, I wouldn't imagine so.
I think next week we'll
they're
see
in the
him,
finals. What's the point?
and he'll probably be eased off he might be the 14. They'll certainly want him to play before the finals just to get some rhythm back, because the side will be different with him in it. But anyway, they'll win this week.
Yep. Well, big game. It's going to be interesting. So, we have the 11th place Knights on Sunday, 2 o'clock, playing the 13th place Gold Coast Titans. This is another one of those games. I suppose Tyson Frizzell out, AJ Brimson out, but Braden Best in for the Knights. It's such an interesting game, this one, because if the best of one versus the worst of the other, well, then you know what's going to happen there. That's a no-brainer. But if the best of each of these sides can come out, well, it's going to be an absolutely cracking game at 2 o'clock. It's daytime footy. It's meant to be like, you know, we're in for a mini heat wave coming up, so it's going to be warm football. You know, I just think that it's going to be really interesting. I look at these two sides, and I think the Titans are just this team this year that were that little engine that could but didn't. You know, like, could you put one more chug at? No, what's the point of that? The key players, David Fafita being one of them, when he fires, I was actually watching some of their football because I had this theory. He fired more in games they've lost than they've won. And it's just like, well, why is that? Why is it David Fafita needs to be in a losing situation to all of a sudden go, oh, I'm going to play football now? It's a really... This is a game I have no idea who's going to win this, and I'm picking the home side for that reason. I've got the Newcastle Knights winning. I think Bradman Best adds far more steel with Kalen Ponga. It's going to be a very interesting game because when you look at the fact that they really, you know, they played well last week against a pretty awful South Sydney side. If they do well this week, that puts them to 28. Depending on what other teams do, they're in the hunt yet again. I've got the Knights winning this one because they're at home, Griff.
Yeah, I'm certainly tipping the Knights. You can't bank on either of these teams. The Knights have been in pretty good form, actually, in recent weeks. They went down to the wire with the Sharks, and I actually tipped them that night, and they had a refereeing decision being different. They would have got a penalty and would have won the game. But you can't deal in ifs. They have been good. I was out last Saturday night, but this game there against the Rabbitohs was on the screen, and it looked as though they did it reasonably easily.
They did in the end.
Against the Rabbitohs. Titans, you never know how they're going to go. But I'm going to tip the Knights simply because they've been in decent form. Bradman Best is a big in, and they do still have a sniff of finals football. Do you know who they play next week?
I sure do.
I think it was one of the
I've
in contention.
I've got that up and ready. You're it. Okay. Next week, they play the Dolphins.
Yeah. Okay. So currently,
guess where?
The team.
McDonald Jones.
There we are. So it could
if the
Dolphins.
You know what I mean? Like
Dolphins win this week.
They know they're not
and
traveling.
The Dragons lose.
That's right.
It could be.
They are not traveling for the rest of the season.
All right. Well, I'm going to back them in, to at least win this game, and I do think they can also beat the Dolphins. But they're at this stage, their fate is out of their hands. They've got a dreadful for and against. And if the Dragons were to pull their finger out and win 2 games, or for and against isn't a factor, but there's still a chance, and I'm going to tip them this week.
Okay, excellent. Well, yeah, I've got the Knights too, so the Titans, just insane. To finish off the round at 4:05 at Allianz Stadium in Sydney, we have the Sydney Roosters versus the Canberra Raiders. Maria Hargreaves out. Now, gone. Swa'ali'i out. There's some big ins. Brandon Smith, Connor Watson are in. It's a very interesting side that they've named. As for the Raiders, it's pretty much stock standard for them. So a few people on their extended bench, but that's about it. I think the Roosters are going to want to atone for last. They're just going to want to play this game out of their skin. There were times in last week where you thought, well, hang on, and all of a sudden they won the game. I've got a gut feeling they want one clinical performance before the last round, and this is it. I think they're absolutely going to belt the Raiders. I think they're going to put them to the sword. I think the Raiders, the season gone, but I just think the Roosters, you've got, I think that regardless of who's out, the people in are just going to absolutely fire. The message is going to be, let's be clinical, and I think they're going to be. I've got the Roosters winning this one and winning it very comfortably, Griff.
Yeah, the Raiders were very, very good last week, but Roosters, they have a habit of putting teams to the sword. I don't think the Raiders will be able to match it with the Roosters. The Roosters don't always turn up and play their best footy, but I think this week at home they'll win by a decent score.
Yeah, I agree. That's pretty easy. Well, that rounds out this week, and that rounds out this week of the competition. Thanks for listening. I hope we were able to provide you with some insights and some ideas of who you thought might or may not win. It's getting very close. Next week, week after, we'll probably give our report card for semester
yearly
2.
Report. Yeah, after the final round.
After the final round, we'll probably give our yearly report.
Semester 2.
Semester 2. Thank you again, Griffo. As always, an absolute pleasure. Thank you for everyone for listening. I hope your team wins this week. And as always, have a great week, everyone.
Thanks, listeners. Thanks, Shano. And enjoy the weekend's football. And we'll be back next week.
Bye now.